Hi friends, this is Tina and welcome to my new video. In this video, we are of course going to be setting up my February theme in my bullet journal, and sorry that this video is coming out a bit later than usually, and also sorry for not informing you about my little break from YouTube this January. I was just kind of refocusing on some of my other hobbies and interests that I haven't had the time to do last year, so I was just doing something else and not really feeling like editing videos, so I just didn't post anything. But I'm back and I am planning on posting more this month or in February, and yeah, I hope you don't mind that I had a little break there. Now we are starting with my cover page for February, and my theme is very random. I was planning on just painting some of these kind of wintry berries and plants here, but I just kind of changed my mind halfway. I did still paint these kind of frosty plants, but my initial idea that I was thinking about at this point definitely is not how this whole theme turned out to be. I changed my mind multiple times. So you can see that I did a little sketch beforehand. I just have these random little stems and these like fluffy plants. And I also took my watercolors, and I'm just kind of speeding through this process here in the video because I actually did not end up keeping this part in this whole setup at all. As you can see, I was just adding those little paint blotches behind those plants that I'm going to be painting on later, but I did not keep those details in. But here's my reference photo that I used for the plants, or just at least looked at it a little bit to see how the colors look like in these plants. I actually first wanted to paint this full picture that I just showed you, like with the background and everything, but I just wanted to simplify it because, like I said, I didn't really have that much time. So I decided that I would instead just paint the plants and just add those watercolor little droplets behind. But I definitely made it harder on myself because I ended up changing my mind so much that I ended up making this the hardest way possible. But I just started painting these little stems with some of these brown and kind of orangey shades, and I was just using some random paint from my palettes. My palettes were really dirty and I just didn't feel like washing them for this video, so I was just using my leftover paints from other paintings that I've done recently. So yeah, this definitely was not the most thought out plan to work on this theme, and I wish it was because I feel like it turned out better than what I was planning on doing in the first place. But still, I'm not like the biggest fan of this cover page. I actually like the other pages that I did in this setup much more because I was just thinking about them more and knowing what I was going to do, whereas my cover page was kind of like experimental and me just randomly adding colors everywhere and seeing how things turned out. And even though it's sometimes fun to go and just start painting without a plan, most of the time for me it turns out that those kinds of experiments don't turn out that well. At least I sometimes just have to do a lot of things and kind of restart things and cover some details that I don't want to have in the finished piece, if you get what I mean. But as you can see, I was just painting those little fluffy tops of these plants. I don't know what this plant is called, but I think this is one of them that kind of looks pretty and still like lives during the winter, or at least during the start of winter. So I thought that they were perfect for this season as well, although we don't have any snow here at the moment, so I don't know how wintry this theme should be because it definitely looks more like spring here right now. I was just filming and suddenly my memory card ran out of space, so I didn't catch the biggest mistake that I did on this whole painting process here on the video, but I randomly just dropped my brush on top of this paper and I got this annoying brown paint everywhere. So I tried to fix that, and I don't know how well that turned out, but it's okay because I ended up painting on top of pretty much all of those areas anyway, except the little stain on the left side, which I tried to remove with an eraser later, and I think it actually worked out pretty well. This usually doesn't happen to me that much, but I felt like all the time that I was filming this video I was just popping my head into the frame, and you can definitely see that in the video, so I really hope that doesn't bother you. So when I was done with the plants itself, as you can see, I started adding this kind of pinkish, like beige color. This is like dusty rose color, I would say. And I just started adding that gouache everywhere on the page behind those plants. And I think it actually worked out really well. I think these colors ended up working together pretty well. But again, it was always kind of like trial and error with this cover page. So I wasn't sure what I was going to do next. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend just going without a plan if you are thinking about setting up your bullet journal. Since I wanted to use this background color in some of my other spreads as well, and I wanted to have a pretty accurate color match to this one, I took a random piece of paper and did a little swatch of this paint into that card. So later on when I'm working on another spread, I can just try to mix a color that looks similar to this, and then I can, add that color next to this swatch that I did earlier and just see how the match is it like an accurate color match to this one. All of my other spreads looked definitely different from this cover page as well, but I just wanted to make sure that the color difference wouldn't be too big, because I think that would just maybe change the mood of this theme. When I was done with the background on this cover page, by the way, I'm going to be also painting on the left side of this whole spread, I decided to just add a little header in this page, and I just used my Tombow fudenosuke hard tip pen, making this like 02 header on the top left side of this page with these serif font type numbers. And I actually really liked how it looked in the beginning before I colored them in with just the black outline. So I ended up changing it later and just kind of coloring in the inside areas of those numbers with white gouache. I don't know if that makes any sense, but you will see later how the numbers turned out. But I just liked the outline look with these ones, but I didn't realize it at the time. But like I already said, I didn't have much time setting this up, so I just wanted to kind of save some time by making a Dutch door here on my cover page. And even though I think it turned out fine, I honestly don't really like the look of the little Dutch door flaps that I have here in the middle. Like the color selection that I used in this whole first spread isn't really the one that I went with in the end when I set up my two other spreads, but it's fine. And as you can see, like I said, I colored in the left side of this whole Dutch door spread as well with the same gouache shade. So now I have this kind of beige border around the whole page. And here you can also see how those outlined numbers looked in the cover page. But the first Dutch door page kind of in the middle here is going to be my calendar spread. It's interesting to see how my order of these pages is definitely different than normally. I always like to have my cover pages on the right side of the page, so that's why I added it here, but it doesn't really make sense in order to have my cover page to be the first one of my spreads in this setup. Anyway, it works out. So as you can see, I also just glued this little strip of red paper on to the upper side of this calendar spread, and then I just added these double lines for the weeks, and then I also added my dates for each and every day. And I was kind of thinking about the colors that I wanted to use in this spread, because I've really relied on colorful papers in my previous themes, so I wanted to do that here as well, but I just didn't really know what colors I wanted to go for. So I glued in this gray piece of paper and it worked fine, but I actually don't really like the red one. I thought that I would like it more, but I ended up liking the gray one in the end, and I went with that in many of my other spreads. So the left spread is my tracker spread, and it was definitely interesting to find out new layouts to fit all of these spreads in this kind of smaller space, but it worked fine. I hope I have the motivation to use these spreads in my bullet journal setup in February, because it's definitely interesting to have all of these three important spreads in this kind of one space where the decoration for each of these spreads is pretty much the same. But as you can see, I stamped the word trackers on the upper left side of the spread, and then I just added these cutout small calendars with these boxes onto the middle of the page, and then I just wrote all of my trackers here. And this will be interesting to see how this works out. But like I said, I hope I have the motivation to use this, even though all of my spreads are pretty much the same because they have the same decorations. Every time that I'm writing down some things now, I'm always using my Uniball Signo gel pen. It's my go-to pen now, and it works so much better on this textured paper than my Muji gel pen works, so a recommendation on that. Because 3 spreads in one wasn't enough, I also added my goals page in this cover page. Honestly, I'm not sure if I will use this because I've liked the way of setting my goals in my previous monthly setups because they have been on a separate spread, but let's see if this works out. I feel like I'm much more confident in my bullet journal now, so maybe it will work out. But the flaps actually turned out to be a little bit annoying because there's so many of them and they hardly stay closed. So I'm not sure if this is the most practical way of setting up this whole spread. But hey, we all learn from these mistakes, and I don't think maybe it wasn't a mistake. Let's see how it works out, like I said. So as a last little decoration that I'm happy that I decided to go for, I added these little stars on the cover page as well. I'm not sure if they fit together with the illustration that well, but it's fine. I love an extra sparkle in my pages. I don't mind it at all. So yeah, I just added these little stars and little shiny things in the cover page, and then I moved on to the next spread, which is probably my favorite, even if it's super simple. So on the next spread, I decided to add my February memories and a playlist page, and I decided to do this in a similar way as I usually do my goals and my summary page. So I just added these colorful papers on both sides of the page, but I wanted to also do a little bit of a different thing because I really liked the beige background that I had in my cover page, so I wanted to add it here as well. But I also realized that the light gray paper that I wanted to add on this page didn't really pop out from the beige background at all. Like, the colors were too similar to each other. So I decided that I would make this gold border on both of these papers, and it actually worked out really well. And I really think this detail brought the pages to life, and it just made them look so much more interesting and elegant as well. And this is where in the setup process I realized that I love this style so much, and I wish I would have used it more on my cover page as well, because the gold definitely felt like the best thing to add together with the beige background. So if I would go back, I would definitely do my calendar page and my trackers a little bit differently and just, make them look more elegant and interesting in a way. But it's okay. I do like all of these spreads, but this definitely was my favorite, even though it is super simple. So as you can see, I was just painting only the edges of both of these pages because, of course, when I'm adding the paper on top, only those areas are going to be showing. So I didn't just waste all of this paint for no reason. And I would say that one thing that is hard for me with gouache, at least the one that I have, is that when I'm adding thicker coats of gouache on my paper, it looks much more uneven than what it's going to be drying as because I feel like each time that I'm adding my first layer, I'm like, oh my gosh, this looks so uneven. I have to go and add another layer on top. And when I do, it just starts packing with this color, and there's going to be more streaks because I just have too much of that gouache on top. But it actually will just look even when it dries out. Like, it looks completely different from when it's dry to when it's wet. So I don't know. That was one thing that I noticed when I was painting these pages with this gouache color. So when I was done with the background itself, I just added those pieces of paper on top, and as you can see, the shine is absolutely beautiful, and those two shades, the gray and the beige, just work together. There's enough contrast to kind of divide those two colors from each other, and I really like that I ended up going with the gold details. So on the left page, I have my playlist page, and I was just using this washi tape that I own. It's kind of like a similar shade to the background, but it's a little bit of a colder tone. But I just glued those little rectangles on the left side so they could be almost like the album covers for all of the songs that I'm going to be adding later. And then I also stamped the words February memories onto the right page. I noticed that I wasn't really loving using my really huge memory spread for January, so so I decided to go for this smaller space instead, and let's see if this will be filled or not. But I still also like to have this option, so if I have any fun things that I want to glue in or write down, I can do that. And often that I'm stamping on my pages, the ink doesn't look really even, so I just went in with my brush pen to just kind of filling those little cracks that didn't show through enough. But that is it for the spread, and now we'll go to my last one, which is my weekly spread Dutch door layout. And yes, I only set up basically 3 different spreads in this whole video, which is definitely a record. So I did one thing differently with this weekly spread layout. I always do Dutch doors now. I just basically have one decoration and one kind of common area with the notes section and my small calendar in this weekly spread layout. And I have like a different little page for my weekly writings and tasks, etc. So I changed one thing up, which was also cutting down the lower portion of these pages. So as you could see, I showed a little clip in the beginning when we flipped to this page where I had cut out this section on the lower part, and I just think it looked really pretty when we have that beige background here again when I add it later. I love adding tabs to my weekly spreads. They're definitely mostly just decorational, but I just really love the pop of color they add to my pages, especially with this gold shade. And by the way, if you are interested in these gold watercolors or any other products that I used in this video, I will have everything linked in the description. And yeah, this gold is called champagne gold and it's literally perfect. But yeah, I thought that I would now go for the berries since I didn't add them in my cover page, but I have to say, I think red wasn't the best option for this spread. I still really like it, but it looks so Christmassy with the gold colors. I cannot. I'm not ready for another Christmas. But as you can see, I was just adding this red paint on the paper. I wasn't really interested in making the most realistic look this time, so I didn't add that much like highlights and shadows, but I was just adding some color variation to the berries just to make them, you know, look different and look like there's a bunch of these little red berries here. But yeah, I wish I would have gone for different berries. I think this definitely looks Christmassy because the colors, this beige and this snow on top of them, and also like the gray color and gold is just a Christmassy combo, and I realized it later, but it's okay. I also added this branch on top of the berries, and again I was just really adding just like a bunch of colors together, not really adding any other colors to my palette, just working with the ones that I had already mixed in my palette beforehand, which is sometimes totally fine. I feel like I often just like waste paint, which is sad to say, but since gouache, like you can reactivate it with water, but when you're working on something larger and you want to, you know, work on bigger areas and make something more realistic, I think usually not adding new colors and just working with the ones that you already have, it's kind of hard because even though you reactivate it, it might not work in the same way as, you know, adding new paint on it. So that's the sad thing about painting sometimes, because it's sometimes hard to not waste any paint. But as you can see, I'm just adding the same beige color in this background as well. I again painted the whole thing. I painted this section, and I also painted underneath those pages and also above the right side. And I really think this like color that I used here is really pretty. I just really love that dusty rose color. I often get questions about how I get my gouache to look so smooth, and even though it doesn't look that smooth here when it's wet, I swear it is smooth when it dries. So firstly, I just use enough water. So I always try to go for this milky or creamy texture with my gouache and just add water accordingly. And the other thing is trying to mix enough gouache in advance so you don't have to start mixing colors in between your process, and then some areas of your paintings already have dried and it gets really tricky. And I also added that little note section on the right side. I was just using the same technique that I used in my last spread, which was the gray paper together with that champagne gold border, and I just love that combination. It looks so pretty. And at this point, I also realized that I had not added the snow on top of the berries, so I quickly just did that. I basically just added snow everywhere and just added these tiny shadows with this light gray color and blended them together with the white. And that's pretty much everything that I did with this painting. Like I said, it wasn't too time consuming. I think I spent like maybe half an hour on this. I'm usually really bad with my time. I never can only spend like 20 minutes on a painting, so it always goes to like 30 minutes. But I also think that that is not much time at all to paint something, so it's fine. I also sprinkled some of those stars around the painting, and that definitely made it more Christmassy, but hey, we're going with it now. And then I also stamped the word notes on top of the box that I added and just made these gray little lines on top as well. I messed up with the small calendar on the right upper side of the spread, so I just glued a new white paper on top, even though I don't think it looked as pretty as it would on just on top of that beige color, but it's fine. I added my tasks header and also all of the days of the week so I can write my tasks there. And yeah, that is it for this whole setup. It went by so fast because I just didn't have that much footage, but I really hope you also enjoyed seeing me set up this unique kind of theme, because this is definitely different from my usual ones. But we are now getting to the end of this video, and I will quickly flip through all of the pages that I made in this one. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, leave a thumbs up, and leave a pink emoji down in the comments so I know you watched until the end. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye bye!